fellow travelers, welcome on in. This is the 153rd level of the RPG Cave. I'm one of your hosts, the level 199 human Dark Lord, Ryan Turford, and I am joined once again by the level 199 Elf Battle Alchemist, Dr. Garret Bland. How's it going, Garret?
I'm doing good. Week 0 of Garret being on the show uninterrupted. So there you go, Rybo. Yep. Week 0.
Yeah, get the counter going, Rybo. We know.
Get the counter going.
Yep. Garrett's finally back, of course.
Yep.
First of all, I hope you had an amazing vacation. We'll talk about that
good.
in a second. I also did a solo episode last week as well, which was interesting.
Nice. Yeah.
Because I've never done a solo episode of this show before.
Oh, really? Okay.
But it was fun because you did. Fun fact, around the same time last year, you did your first solo episode of the show.
Yes, I did.
With the Atelier Marie episode.
Yes, Atelier Marie remake. Yeah.
And then I did the Tales. The Tales of Tier List was the episode last week by myself.
The Tales of Tier List. I like that episode name. That's a good one.
Yeah.
Clever.
But, I mean, I know it was unoriginal to do 2 tier lists in a row, Garret, but I was just like, if you want to do an episode where it's just me,
dude, like, just have at it. Like that sounds like a Ryan episode right there.
Like probably the most Ryan episode where I will probably never find like that many people ever who have played all the Tales games.
Right.
Ever be able to do
except for Kevin. Yeah.
He hasn't played all of them either though.
Oh yeah, that's true. He hasn't. I guess he hasn't played the older ones or whatever.
Yeah, so. I think he's missed out on a lot of the older ones.
There's a lot of older ones. Like when I hear every time a Tales game, I feel like there's a random word generator at the end, and someone's just making stuff up. It's like, yeah, that was on the Dreamcast, and I'm just like, yeah, right. Yeah, it was released in 1987. Sure. Okay. Yeah. Sounds good.
And then you look up the Wikipedia article and you're like, oh.
I was like, oh, it's actually there.
They're telling the truth.
Yeah, that's pretty much how it goes. Like that happened with Tales of Abyss. I'm like, there's a Tales game on 3DS? Okay. And then I'm hearing the remake. What's the remake coming out soon?
Tales of Graces F.
Yeah, that one just feels made up too. Tales of Hearts R on Vita. I played. That's probably the farthest I've gone in a Tales game is Tales of Hearts R, and I had to stop. I don't know. I'm not into these games, but you are. So
exactly,
I'm glad.
One of us has to at least be in the Tales games. You know, It's just it's one of the staple JRPG franchises that's out there, but. We talked enough about the Tales series last week. We should probably get into things. Let's clear the dungeon so we can get to Garrett's 3 things as quickly as possible. Because, I mean, I really want to hear Garrett's 3 things. But before we do that, of course, if you like what we do and you want to support the show, there's a number of amazing ways you can do that. Number one, if you're watching the live stream right meow over on youtube.com/carpoolgaming or twitch.tv/carpoolgaming live, you have an important job to do, of course. If you're watching on either Twitch or YouTube, hitting that follow button really helps out a long way. If you're on Twitch, though, of course, we are currently in the month, Garret. I don't know if you knew this. We're currently in the month of September.
Yes.
September.
You get 20% off, 25% off your sub this month.
25% off your sub.
Cool.
And we are, of course, putting all of our subs this month towards our Extra Life goal. So we can go to Extra Life this year in Rome, New York. In fact, we will be, we've got a cool Airbnb. We got B&B. We've got other events set up. So
I saw the Airbnb listings. I'm jealous, by the way. It's a pretty cool place that you guys are going to go over and have fun without me. I see you. Hopefully next year.
We tried, Garret. We tried to get you to go this year.
Yeah, it's just a lot of life events happening that month, so it's just not in the cards this year. But like I am like I'll plan like legit plan for next year.
It's because you're working the U.S. election, isn't it? That's what's going on there. You're just like, I can't miss the U.S. election. I need to be home for it.
I cannot legally or illegally say that of any kind or any involvement of the elections. So I'm just kidding.
Of course. I knew it this whole time.
Wait, okay, so Extra Life is November 3rd, right? Or okay. When is election day? That's like really close.
I think it's November 4th.
Oh no. Yeah, I better be here for that. November 5th, Tuesday, November 5th.
Oh, I was off. But that's the day that everyone's coming back from Extra Life is the 5th. So
yeah, probably one of the most important days of this country, and we'll see where our fate turns out.
Yeah.
I'm sweating bullets. But anyways, we can keep on going, Ryan. Let's go through it.
We should probably finish clearing the dungeon. Of course, also, if you're listening on audio feeds, don't forget to hit that subscribe button as well. Maybe, of course, leave us a nice Apple Podcast review or, a comment on Spotify, because those help the show get discovered. And, of course, more people joining the show, which, by the way, again, I've said this multiple weeks in a row, but this continues to happen, so I'm going to continue to say it. Shout out to all of our new listeners on Spotify. There's lots of new listeners on Spotify for this show in particular. So I wanted to say shout out to all y'all out there for checking us out on Spotify. I appreciate it. Also, if you want one big podcast feed with the entire Carpool Gaming Cinematic Universe on it, head over to our Patreon, patreon.com/Carpool Gaming, including a whole bunch of people who went and did this as well, starting with Casey Pratt, who joined as a free member on the old Patreon. We've got Hot Gamer Boy Summer, who joined as a free member as well. Solo, who upgraded to the platinum tier from the gold tier. TechMike, who upgraded to the ultimate producer tier. Shout out to TechMike and Solo for hopping in those extra tiers. By the way, most people might not know this, but the ultimate producer and the platinum producer tiers come with free merch when you sign up for the
that's pretty good.
Yes, because
good deal.
We have an ultimate producer shirt and as well a piece of merch for being a platinum producer.
Nice.
So, got a shout out to that. McBeal, who joined the exclusive tier, Jinsu 3000, who stuck around with us because they were on the 7-day free trial last week. Mm-hmm. Now they're fully on the exclusive tier, so shout out to them. And then, of course, massive thank you in capital letters to Brian Reese for his incredibly generous direct contribution towards our Extra Life efforts.
For sure.
I mean, if it wasn't for Brian Reese, we might not have been able to make Extra Life as special this year, but it's gonna be pretty.
It's gonna be extra special because of Brian Reese. So
yes.
Thank you very much.
So shout out to Brian Reese for being awesome. And of course, last but not least, we have our website, carpoolgaming.com, or if you want Carpool Gaming merch, like maybe some upcoming merch for a certain event that we'll talk about in the future. Or, if you want an RPG Cave t-shirt or Campfire t-shirt or anything else, carpoolgaming.com has got you covered. So check it out over there. And now, Garrett, 3 things. Hit me with the 3 things.
Okay, 3 things. Let's just get into Hawaii here. Sure. Okay. This was my 4th time there, believe it or not. So the first 2 times I was like, I was way younger. I was like, first time I was like, I don't know, 8 or 9. And then second was when I was 16. And then I went last year to Oahu, and then this year back to Maui and the Big Island. You know how many islands there are, Ryan, in Hawaii?
There's like 10, I think.
Yeah, there's a lot of them. But basically, the main ones are Kauai, Oahu, Maui, and the Big Island. Those are like the main ones. And so we went to Maui and the Big Island, and it was super fun. 8 days or 9 days, I think, 8 nights. And, I chilled. I did not play video games at all.
That's good. You were on vacation, Garrett.
I was on vacation. I was outside. I was snorkeling. I was on the beach. I was at different resorts and different kind of hiking places. We got, the coffee is pretty famous in the Big Island. Have you ever heard Kona coffee?
I don't know enough about Hawaii to be able to answer any of these facts, Garrett.
Well, if you were a coffee connoisseur, you would know what
I probably would. I've never been a coffee
connoisseur. It's pretty. It's like they sell it at a premium. Like it's much higher price than regular or just like other brand coffee. It's very good, and it's because of the climate there in the Big Island. It's the volcanic ash. It's very fertile and just they kind of grow it in a specific region of the Big Island. We did a tour of a coffee farm, which was super cool, from the beans to the roasting, and it was so delicious. We got like 1.5 pounds back. It's just so good.
I was going to say, that sounds like your paradise, you being a big coffee connoisseur.
Yeah, no, it's spoiling us. We went to Mount Mauna Kea, which is one of the mountains, volcanoes in the Big Island. Went to the very top at night, and very minimal light pollution. Like there's no light pollution in the Big Island. They actually on purpose put yellow lights instead of like those big bright lights for street lamps to minimize the light pollution itself. And so you could see the stars like really well. If you don't know do you know how Hawaii was formed, Ryan?
I'm assuming that there was a big volcano there and there were many eruptions and that caused it.
Yeah, well, there's a unique hotspot in the Earth's mantle that develops volcanoes on that string of islands. So each island produced was from a volcano that was from that certain hotspot. It's just shifting. The mantle core is shifting like northwest or something like that. There we go. Star Athena knows. Yes, it's the hotspot. And so that's why it's pretty unique. It's a unique climate, a unique region over there. Like you can go from like super hot, like very, very like high 90s or whatever, near the beach. But you go up in the mountains and it's really cold. And sometimes it snows out in the mountains during winter time. So high range of climate.
Well, speaking of climate, Garrett, Yon32 asks from the Discord, I personally really want to hear about the weather in Hawaii. So tell me about the weather in Hawaii where you were staying.
It's pretty crazy. It's like raining, like kind of precipitously, like everywhere. It's like nonstop raining in this certain island or this certain area. So you do see a lot of rainbows, but you see a lot of sunshine. It gets pretty hot, like 80s and 90s or whatever, but it's pretty cool, mild temperature. It just depends where you're at. Up in the mountains, it's pretty cold. It's like very windy, very cold. But down the beach is pretty good.
Nice.
Pretty nice temperature.
And Jordan asks from the chat here, did you visit the Jurassic Park filming locations, Garrett?
I did that in Oahu. Now, the Jurassic filming locations, as far as I'm aware, is in Oahu or Kauai. So I wasn't in those islands. Maui and Maui's like kind of two, actually it's like kind of two volcanoes, one on either side and a valley in the middle. Whereas it's pretty dry actually over there, but in certain sides of the volcanoes or whatever, it's very rainforesty. Like there's a lot. It's one of the wettest spots in the U.S. actually. So very high like dynamic range of climates in Hawaii. It's pretty cool. So
yeah, no kidding. That sounds like it's kind of all over the place.
It's an adventure. You go outside and drive around, do tours, and yeah, you're just at a bunch of spots like in terms of just climate and then landmarks, and there's a lot of national parks there, a lot of great hikes. Snorkeling was amazing. You just go out onto these certain spots on the beach and you could just instantly see like coral and fish down below. It's pretty cool overall. Hawaii is definitely an experience. And so if you're into swimming, if you're into adventure, into outside, you definitely make it out there, at least one of the islands. Oahu is good I think is a good entry point if you've never been to Hawaii, just because there's a city there, there's a more commercial development, but you could drive out into kind of adventure type areas. Maui's okay. It's just very wide, and so there's a lot of driving involved. But the Big Island was pretty fun. I think the Big Island is a pretty cool spot to be in. Anyways,
nice.
Hawaii's cool.
That sounds like you had a lot of fun over the course of the week.
Lots of adventure. Lots of stuff to do. Lots of great food, too. Hawaiian food is very specific. Has a lot of Japanese influence, actually. A lot of island cuisine. A lot of pork, a lot of sushi, a lot of raw fish. Yeah, overall, really good time.
Nice. And did you capture any Pokemon while you were there? Because, of course, Pokemon Sun and Moon, based off Hawaii, famously. Which we talked about 2 weeks ago. We talked about Pokemon, Garrett.
I did not open my Pokemon Go app, and I'm wondering if there's any unique on there, but I just didn't want to install that app and make the time to do that. So, no.
That makes sense.
I did not catch any Pokemon.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
To disappoint you.
You didn't disappoint me. You might have actually. I'm gonna give this person a shout out because I was not expecting this when we did our Pokemon episode.
Oh gosh!
Shout out to CyberDrash 8416 who gave us, Garrett, after our Pokemon tier list, 13 reasons on why Pokemon Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl are the worst remakes of all time, and it's literally 13 paragraphs long.
Wow.
Going on. I first of all, I appreciate someone for taking the time to go through there and talk about all this. I appreciate that.
You were pretty far in the episode to listen to get to Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, so I applaud you to get to that point in the episode, and then hearing, and I'm glad you agree with us, that, or at least with me, that it's probably the worst Pokemon game, mainline Pokemon game.
Remember, I didn't have an opinion because I didn't play it.
Yeah, and so, I mean, you can give 13 reasons. That's great. I've read through all of them, and I agree with most of it, if not all. It's that game is rough, and I honestly, if someone's like, if someone's like, I want to play 4th gen Pokemon, great, play Platinum on the DS. Just grab something else, not Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, please. Yeah. That's the way to go. And it's just how it is. And I wish it would have gone better with that game, because it's hard to I don't know if it's hard to mess up per se, but they found a way. It's way more boring than the DS game. So, but anyways, I do have a story though, Ryan.
Oh, excellent. I like stories.
Yeah. So, I was wearing this shirt. Hold on, let's see. There we go.
Okay. For audio listeners, Garrett is wearing a Bobby Summer Game Fest shirt.
Yes, the Bobby Summer Game Fest shirt. You got little Bobby just hanging out on the tube with his little straw and drink, and his sunglasses. He was having a good time. I was transferring from Maui to the Big Island in the middle, and there was one of the security guys looked at me when I was going through, the security radar or whatever, saw my shirt. He's like, "Cool shirt." And I was like, "Thank you very much." You probably don't understand the reference. That is okay, but you understand it's a video, because there's a little Nintendo Switch or a little tiny controller Bobby is holding on this shirt, so he must know it's video game related or something like that. So, anyways, maybe that's why he said "cool shirt."
Maybe.
But
I mean, other than the fact that it's also a cool shirt.
It could be a fan, a CPG fan that
random security guard on the way to Hawaii
from Hawaii. Yeah.
My God.
So yeah.
I mean, we have. I don't know if you knew this, Garrett, but we have Carpool Gaming listeners all across the world. Not just the ones that we interact with, but a lot of ones that don't interact with us. We have listeners to Carpool Gaming Podcast in almost every country around the world. So
that's pretty cool.
You never know. That might actually be possible. But
that was my one thing.
Of course. First thing.
Second thing, actually big shift change for me. I started I started a new job today, day one. Because we transitioned. We got by another company in our office transition. So today was day one, and it was a big change for me and for the rest of our team. And it went well. It went good.
That's good.
Yeah, big life change.
Well.
Yeah, Sean saying that he was switching jobs too. So I just had to tell you guys too that big life change for me too. Different commute, different, but at least it's same work. So.
I mean, I'm going to just throw it out there, Garrett, because clearly this is the season for big job changes. And clearly, I didn't want to feel left out because there's big job changes happening in my job too. So
okay.
that I'll talk about in the future. But
sounds good.
It's interesting. It's interesting how they all just kind of happen around the same time. And also, Garrett, I appreciate the fact that you started your new job the same day as the 30th anniversary of the Dreamcast, which was today.
That's exactly how we lined it up, you know, because it's with the Dreamcast and with the anniversary of Final Fantasy VIII release.
Yeah, we'll get to that later.
That's exactly why we did it today. So
9999, Garrett. What a date! A date that will live in
that is a date, and that marked the failure of the Sega, which is pretty interesting.
It wasn't a failure. It was a great console. Get out of here.
Well, market failure. How about that?
To be fair, it's my second least favorite Sega console, but it's still good. It's still a good console.
Third thing, I've been still playing Final Fantasy VII OG. I promise you, I've been playing it. I played it on the plane ride. I played it outside of it. So
you posted pictures of it too.
I posted pictures. I see the Sephiroth clip in the beginning of this podcast, I'm like around there.
Okay. I mean, you did post a picture on Twitter with that thing saying Sephiroth on it. So
yeah, no, he's legit. He's cool. His origin is cool. I'm with the Chocobo.
Sephiroth as well.
Oh, I'm with Chocobos right now.
There you go. Well, I'm glad you're enjoying it.
This polygon, man, PS1 trips me up. It's a ride. It's like, I see that, I'm like, that is 3D clip art like crazy. Like it's just so fascinating how fast video game development between, let's say, 1996, 7, 2D to 3D, that was pretty crazy. But even 3D up until, let's say, 2005. Let's go with Xbox 360, PS3 era. Rapid development. And then I think when we got to, like, let's say 2008 and forward, it's been in diminishing returns here. Like, I could play BioShock 1. Of course, it's been up-res. Of course, it's been remade. I could, but it's the same mechanics in the same game. And it's just like, okay, this feels like a game that can be handled by a random studio that could be put out into Steam now. You know, it's just kind of crazy to see this game back in 97.
Well,
trying to go through
and again, we talked about this before a few weeks ago when you first started playing, but it's like it's mostly because it started as an N64 game with this game in particular. Why the polygon characters are the way it is, because like that's how like the blocky characters was very much a thing of the N64 era.
That makes sense.
Or that console in particular, because like the PS1 had like more lifelike characters in a lot of their games, especially with Final Fantasy VIII. Because like if Final Fantasy VII was developed from the ground up for PlayStation, like that's what it would probably look like. It would probably look more like that. But it was being developed for N64, so it had kind of that look that other N64 games had going for it.
That makes a lot more sense because, you know, playing Parasite Eve, it's a little bit more lifelike in that.
Because they came out around the same time.
Style.
Like they were being developed together, so obviously, like they would have made it look more like that. Like made the characters look maybe more like the Parasite Eve characters, rather than the blocky, like polygon.
It's so
characters
blocky.
made up of shapes.
It's literally like, here's a square or here's a triangle.
Yeah.
And I see the polygon triangle wings. I'm just like, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
It's I think it's just kind of funny,
but again, it's got like a fun.
Great game.
It's got a fun look to it. You know, like it's unique when you compare it to other games back then. So
great game so far. Yeah, not bad.
I'm glad you're enjoying it.
Not bad.
We'll talk about it more in the future.
As
we progress, of course, through Garrett's backlog adventure. And real quick, you know, I don't want to take up too much time with this, but we've got a little side quest over there. I see a quest marker. I'm just going to run over to this quest.
Let's go over there.
Quest marker. And I talked about it last week, but I just wanted to give MOAR impressions of Visions of Mana real quick. I'm near the end of the game. I'm in chapter 7, which I believe is also where Kevin Ainsworth is right now, because him and I are both kind of playing this game at the same time. And overall, like I talked about it last week, where you know I wasn't really like won over by the story or anything like that, but I really was won over by the gameplay, because I think the gameplay is really fun. And I mean, that hasn't really changed. My opinion is still kind of firmly rooted in kind of the same place as before. In fact, I'm still really enjoying the combat a lot. I think it's a lot of fun. But the only thing I want to bring up now is that this is a game that I feel like is starting to starting to wear out its welcome a little bit, where I'm kind of just wanting this game to be over at this point. Because if people played Trials of Mana before, there is a chapter in Trials of Mana that you do that feels like it goes on forever, because you're exploring a big punch of the world, and going to fight these like big bosses along the way. Yeah. And you kind of do that again in this game, which also feels like it's a bit of a slog at this point. That it's got amazing enemy design though. Like I love the looks of the bosses themselves, and they have really interesting mechanics as well. Like I really like the enemy and boss design. But it's just getting there. It just feels like I just want this game to be over already. So I'm like, I'm finding myself trying to race towards the end. I only have one more of these bosses to go before I, proceed to the end of the game at this point, Garrett. But so far I'm enjoying this game besides that. And really, again, it's a type of the game where if you liked Trials of Mana and you want more of Trials of Mana, but with better combat, then I think you'll actually probably like this game.
Cool. I know we were concerned about the HP sponginess of the boss in the demo. Is it translating to the bosses for the rest of them?
Way better.
Okay,
even
good.
When you fight when I got to the point in the full game where I got to the same boss from the demo, I killed that boss in like a minute and a half.
Okay.
Whereas before
seems
it took
way better.
Forever. And I mean,
it took like 5 or 6 minutes or something like that to get through. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Not only that too, but like you do have some sponginess with some bosses, but overall, I haven't gotten the feeling from playing the game where like any of the enemies were like overly spongy. Like that that boss in the demo felt like.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The one kind of criticism I kind of had with Trials of Mana is like it was nice to pick and choose the different classes, but it was very constrained. You only had 2 different paths, and it felt like, I just needed to stick with this one particular path, and then I'm good to go. So I didn't have much options. How is it with this new game? I know there's a lot of crossover, a lot of carryover, a lot of choices involved with classes and skills. Did you find more, I guess, kind of versatility in the gameplay because of that?
Yes, because each character has 8 character classes associated with it, and you unlock all of them as you progress through the game. But at the same time, only each character can have one of each particular elemental associated with it, which then is associated with each class. So, for example, if you have 2 characters that you really like the moon class is for, because moon is one of the elements, you can only have one character equip the moon.
I see.
But each of the classes for the characters feel really different from each other, which I really like, because like, first of all, each of the characters has 3 different fighting styles that rotate between the different classes. Like, for example, like the main sword guy, he can either be like a sword and board tanky character, or he can be like a one-handed sword kind of like jack of all trades kind of character, or he can be a 2-handed sword powerful attacker. And then you've got various different versions of that with elemental abilities that you unlock that go along with that. So it really allows you to strategize in some interesting and unique ways. But you also kind of have to think about the element of the enemies you're fighting as well, because you want to make sure that you have at least one of the characters that's equipped with like the elemental weakness of what you're fighting. Right. So if you know you're in like a zone where there's a bunch of dark elemental enemies, then you want to make sure that you have like at least one light augmented class member in your party. Right. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. I think I really do prefer that. And I really, getting into just like changing into different classes at any point. Pretty cool. It is a lot of customization options with that. So
exactly. Cool. Not only that, but almost all of your abilities that you unlock across all the classes that you have. So like one of the characters is kind of like a mage type character, and she can learn like any of the spells you learn on like the fire or the water classes will then apply if you're using any other class, regardless of the element. So like I like that it doesn't really punish you for that. Although each character can only have a certain number of moves that they can use in battle at a time that are assigned using to like the ring menu, which makes it a return from the last game. Right.
Yeah. Okay, that sounds good. I think this is one game that's like I'll think about it once it's down the road, maybe $20 on Steam. That's my gut feeling. And when I'm in the mood, I think Trials of Mana just really hit me because I was like, man, I just want a mindless action JRPG to just go through, and it really did hit the spot for me at that time. So it's just whenever I'll get in the mood.
I agree, especially because there's so much out right now. Like Astrobot just came out, the Marvel vs. Capcom collection's coming out this week. There's a ton of other games. Like Castlevania Advanced Collection or a DS collection just came out.
The Dominus collection or whatever. Yeah,
the Dominus collection. There's a bunch of different games coming out right now, so it's just like I know a lot of people just don't have time for this game right now. So this is the type of game that's perfect for Black Friday sale. Pick it up.
And hearing the news about the studio shutting down once the game was released, that's just such a shame. to hear. So
especially because again, like this, like I know that it kind of is in like the 77 kind of spot on Metacritic, on OpenCritic, and that's kind of how I felt about it too, where it's like a good/great game. Like I think it's a lot of fun, and definitely worth your time. But I just don't think you need to rush out and play it right away. I think it's totally fine to just wait on this one.
I think it's just we're in a day and age where like if you really want a big hit, you just have to day one just fill a niche and just like you're gonna get a lot of players. I think just particularly for this one, I think it's just so many people have so many games like these. It's just like, oh, we can wait. It's kind of like for me with Ubisoft games. Once I see a Ubisoft game release, I'm like, I'm going to wait at least 2 or 3 months because I know it's going to be cheaper and I know it's going to be fixed. Yeah. That's the other. That's not a problem for this game. I know it's probably well taken care of.
Yeah, it actually runs. Yeah. It runs and really great, and there's no problems with it. So
cool.
Yeah. Whereas I know again, people who bought Star Wars Outlaws is like, especially on PS5, it's like it's a good thing. Good thing most people wait for sale on those. So
yeah, because I mean, just those. You just hear all the time that they're gonna get patched up. They're gonna get better performance. I even heard Starfield on Series S now has 60 frames per second. Isn't that crazy? They've optimized it to the point where a Series S console can run Starfield at 60 frames. So
you can't play multiplayer Baldur's Gate on split screen, but you can play Starfield at 60 frames per second on Series S.
Yeah, but whatever.
Whatever. YOLO, as the kids say.
Yes, but, YOLO.
Well, now, Garrett, historical high, by the way. We're 32 minutes in the show, and we're finally going to read from the sacred texts.
Oh.
Because it's time to do something we haven't done in a while, Garrett. We're going to do a company profile tonight. We're going to talk about BioWare, and we're going to talk about their history over the many, many years of making games. BioWare is one of my all-time favorite video game companies, and I am just shocked because I realized, going through this, I'm like, we must have done a BioWare episode somewhere. Like, how did we do all these other companies but not do BioWare?
Right.
One of my favorite video game companies of all time. Like, how did that never come up at this point?
Right.
Because the only other BioWare adjacent episode we've done was we did one episode just dedicated to Mass Effect a long time ago.
Okay.
But we haven't.
I think I was thinking of that when you mentioned, we're gonna do a history of BioWare. I was like, we've done one, and then when you said Mass Effect, we just did one of those, and
we did
left
that.
it be.
But, and you hadn't even played those games. That was the episode where I discovered that Garrett has never played Mass Effect, and
I still need to play them. I'm sorry, shame me. Shunned me from RPG Cave forever.
One game at a time, Garrett. One game at a time.
Shun me one game at a time.
We will get there. We will get there to Mass Effect at some point. Garrett's backlog adventure. Okay. I promise. I promise the folks out there. I won't make Garrett play any more Sega CD games until he's played Mass Effect at least once.
Don't torture me like this. But yeah. So it's pretty interesting to see that we're doing BioWare now, especially a company that's been through so much.
Yep, exactly. So many ups and downs in particular, and I'm excited to talk about this tonight. So we're gonna, of course, roll into it as we always do, Garrett, when we do one of these company profiles, because we've got fun facts, and boy howdy,
of course we do.
Multiple paragraphs of fun facts tonight, folks. So buckle up, Garrett, because I've got fun facts for you. So fun that you're going to say to me, Ryan, those in fact were fun facts by the end of this. It's going to happen.
I'm going to say that? Okay.
I don't know, probably. All right. So, of course, BioWare was founded on February 1st, 1995, and has released 17 games to date. In fact, 1995, of course, Garrett, 29 years ago. So BioWare is very quickly approaching their 30th birthday this February.
Yeah, close to my age.
I just feel so old right now. I'm just so much more older than BioWare or you, apparently. So BioWare is actually an interesting company because it was actually founded by 6 individuals. So we had Ray, Greg, Marcel, Trent, Brent, and Augustine. And what was interesting is that Ray and Greg were and Augustine were all medical professionals at the time.
What?
Because just like you, Garrett, they were doctors. They're actual like
they were real doctors.
Ray and Greg are both actual doctors. So
okay.
And what's interesting about this is that BioWare was actually formed not as a video game company, because again, BioWare is the name. They were actually founded as a medical software company.
This is insane. I never knew this at all.
Now you know.
Wow. Okay.
Because the whole idea was when they got out of medical school, they're like, hey, we should develop medical software for hospitals and other medical facilities. And in fact, they did that for the first couple of years of the company. They developed software for hospitals and other medical facilities, which helped them build a nest egg of funds. However, when Ray, Greg, and Augustine were talking about a lot of things over the course of the development of some of the software, they all discovered that they really like video games a lot.
Oh my goodness.
So they kind of wanted to shift their passion to making video games, because they're like, we've done this programming thing already, making medical software. Why don't we take that knowledge of software development and actually turn that into a video game? So they pooled together $100,000 between the three of them. In addition to not only their successful medical software that they developed, Garrett, but also Ray and Greg at the time, as a part-time gig, were still doctors. They were still practicing medicine at the time.
Goodness, that's insane. That's crazy.
They were basically doing that on the side while developing their software, and they're just like, all right. So they took they saved all their money from that, and they decided to actually develop their first video game, which was Shattered Steel, a PC mech game, which released on September 27th, 1996. So a year later.
Okay. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And they developed their first game, a mech game of all games, of course, not a role-playing game. Mech games.
So a question for you. So were they BioWare before they developed video games?
Yes.
Like, that makes too much sense now.
Yes, when you think about the name, Garrett, it's like, huh.
That is too. It makes too. It's. I never realized this, but when you keep saying BioWare, you just think of these massive games, these massive great tentpole RPGs,
Yeah.
But it's a little word there, BioWare. They made medical software, which is that's fantastic. You will never hear the story today. It's only back in the late 80s and 90s that you hear this type of stuff, because there were other companies that were kind of like this, where they were like in another scene.
Yeah, like Working Designs was another
Working Designs was,
because that was like they were like developing IBM accounting software and then shifted to video games.
That's it's crazy to hear. And $100,000 in a little over a year gives you a video game accessible.
Especially
I guess
again at that
90s,
time too, because you didn't need as many game developers, and budgets weren't overinflated or anything like that. And Shattered Steel is like not a super high tech AAA game or anything like that. It was published by Interplay, and they were kind of like a AA publisher at the time. Okay. And it just makes sense that they didn't really need like a ton of money for their.
And it was just on PC, I guess.
Yeah, it was on DOS.
On DOS,
no
oh my
less.
goodness!
It wasn't even a Windows-based game. You could only play it on DOS. It also, there was a Mac version developed by another company later.
Okay,
so there is a Mac version of that game as well, but Windows only, or I guess DOS only. I keep saying Windows, but I should really be saying DOS. But Shattered Steel was actually a modest success. Like, they actually made some money from it, so it let them. They led the team to kind of wonder what was going to be next. Like, what was going to be their next game they wanted to put together. And Ray, Greg, and Augustine all were really interested in pen and paper role-playing games. Like, they had like a little like D&D group kind of going and stuff like that. So they really wanted to translate the experience of playing a pen and paper role-playing game into an actual like video game that you would want to play. That's not like a text-based one. Because at the time, you have to remember, like, we had Dungeons and Dragons video games at the time, but none of them were really like translating the pen and paper experience one-to-one. They were either like action RPGs, or they were just completely just text games only.
Right.
Like they weren't really they weren't really designed in the way that we see like CRPGs now in a big way.
Yeah.
So they started to develop a prototype of a certain little game that they called Battleground Infinity, that they were shopping around to a bunch of different publishers. And of course, they had worked with Interplay on Shattered Steel. And once Interplay saw what they had here with this game, they saw a lot of potential. And luckily, Interplay around this time had obtained the Dungeons and Dragons license. So they were like, this game would really work really well with the Dungeons and Dragons license. Why don't you just turn this into a D&D game? We have the license for it. And that's actually how Baldur's Gate came around, because the original Baldur's Gate was their next game, which released in 1998. And it really was, in a lot of ways, the template for not just, the idea of translating a Dungeons and Dragons experience, but also translating just pen and paper role-playing games in the CRPG format in general going forward. Like it was like the staple game. And it led to other games coming out like Planescape Torment, Icewind Dale, and they all use the same engine because they were all published by like the one arm that eventually kind of was spun out because of Baldur's Gate at Interplay, called Black Isle Studios, which we talked about, I think, on the pen and paper role-playing game episode. We talked about them more. But they that led to a bunch of those other games coming out. And Baldur's Gate was actually a really huge success, which... I think we reported like over 2 million copies of Baldur's Gate at the time.
That's crazy.
When you compare it to modern games, sure, it doesn't sound like a lot. But in 1998, 2 million copies was a very good.
On PC, yeah, that's a success.
Yeah, exactly.
So did they own so Interplay owned the rights of Baldur's Gate, right?
Yes, which is why like BioWare didn't retain the rights to Baldur's Gate after when Baldur's Gate 3 was being developed.
Got it.
Because essentially, I guess the company that bought the Baldur's Gate rights from someone else, the Baldur's Gate rights went back to Wizards of the Coast. After Interplay folded.
I see.
And then that's how the Baldur's Gate 3 name came about for Tellurian for Baldur's Gate 3.
Right.
Yeah. But of course they did another Baldur's Gate game with
Baldur's Gate 2
as well.
Okay.
So there is that. But also Baldur's Gate was such a success that Ray and Greg could finally leave the medical field and could become game makers.
Wait, so Baldur's Gate was the success that got them out of the medical field.
Because while the original Baldur's Gate was being developed for 3 years, Ray and Greg were still doctors.
Okay. So I have to ask you: is it any specialization or is it general health? Ray.
I can't remember off the top of my head. I'd have to look that up.
Oh, okay. I'll look it up for you. You can go ahead and keep on talking.
Yeah. So, of course, the next fun fact that I wanted to throw in here, because I kind of wanted to talk about each of the kind of games and kind of the eras one by one off the fun facts, and kind of the last fun fact I wanted to have here is, of course, BioWare nowadays. It's part of EA. They were actually acquired by EA in November 2005, along with Pandemic Studios, which was an interesting move at the time, because a lot of people were not really expecting that, and that just kind of came out of nowhere. Where they were in the process of developing Mass Effect at the time, and EA kind of just came out of nowhere and just snatched them up, which I thought was interesting. But, it's also interesting when you boot up Mass Effect for the first time, Garrett. It still has. It's still actually missing the EA logo because that game released published by Microsoft Game Studios instead of EA. And then eventually subsequent versions of that game where then that logo is changed to the EA logo instead.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. Do you have fun facts about Ray Mizuka?
Keep on going, because it's very hard actually to find this information.
Yeah, because if I go to his Wikipedia page, it says
it doesn't say
he's a medical doctor practicing in the emergency department as a family physician after graduating.
Oh, family physician. Okay. Sounds good. Yeah. When I was going to his Wikipedia page, it's just all about him and his Canadian investor entrepreneur. Oh, okay. Here's a physician. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So they're both physicians.
Oh, okay.
Cool. They could have been your family doctor, Garrett.
In Canada.
Yeah, I mean,
oh my goodness.
That is an important wrinkle to the story, of course. I didn't mention the fact that, of course, they're a Canadian studio. They're one of the biggest studios, the most prestigious Canadian studios of all time, too, which is crazy to think about. Across their 17 games, of course, dismissing Sonic Chronicles: The Dark Brotherhood, which is also one of their games, Garrett.
Right. You keep mentioning that one, and now it's just locked into my head. Like it's not escaping anymore. Was it a role-playing game developed by BioWare?
Yeah.
And published by
Sega.
I guess Sega, yeah. And on the DS.
On the DS, yep. With MIDI music, of all things.
What music? MIDI music?
MIDI music. Like the music sounded like it was a game from like 1995 because the Super Nintendo used MIDI music as an example.
I understand. Okay.
Yeah, because like most of the music was unfinished by the time the game came out, and they're just like, well, let's put what's in there. Yeah. But so far, yeah, what do you think about the story? I think it's like super interesting that these doctors were like, man, we just really like video games, so let's just leave this field of medical software that we wanted to develop, and let's just make video games instead.
I don't know how that translated at all, but good on them to figure it out. There's always that. I find this with a lot of studios. It's like it is really humble beginnings. It's like these first game or first set of games where it's just like, oh, you never heard of them, but then they have a really big blowout on their third or fourth or fifth game or whatever. In this case, Baldur's Gate for BioWare and now they're pretty successful and pretty famous, and they're just they just go on that road of success. I think it's harder to do that this day and age where there's a lot of games that come out and it's their first game. Like let's say Immortals of Aveum. That's a perfect example. It's created by a brand new studio last year, and it was just a flop because it's because there's just a lot like that, and that's okay. But it was just low sales, and even though it was like kind of a likable game, they can't really do much more because they lost a lot because of that. Because of just the low, weak sales. But
like I said, like in Shattered Steel, we don't have exact numbers for that game because they've never really publicly talked about them. But they described, because IGN did an entire history of BioWare article, which I found was super interesting, where they actually interviewed a lot of people who worked at BioWare. And they talked about the idea where like that game, while it didn't sell millions of copies, it did pretty well, like definitely well enough for them to make another game.
Right.
In the same, which, is a much better starting point than what you described just then with Immortals of Aveum. I think that's the biggest problem.
Yeah, I think scaling is important this day and age. You gotta, it's hard because you need a good budget in order to get a game in a reasonable time frame. Now it just takes 3 or 4 years to even an indie game to go through its full cycle and have a reasonable budget. So yeah, I think it's just a lot harder this time to get into the video game space than it was when they were doing it with Shattered Steel back in the late 90s on DOS.
Yeah, DOS of all things. Yeah, especially because once they got in with Interplay, I think that really helped. Because they had a bunch of games published by Interplay. It wasn't really until Interplay went under that they really stopped developing games with them, which is interesting to think about. So Garrett, speaking of interesting games to think about, did you know that BioWare has a game on the Dreamcast? We talked about the Dreamcast.
I mean, I didn't know, but I can't say I wanted to know either. So.
Oh, geez. Because their game that they developed after Baldur's Gate was actually not a role-playing game. Because they developed Baldur's Gate 2 to come out shortly after this game. But they had MDK2 released on the Dreamcast, and that's like an action-adventure like shooting game. And they talked about how the idea of like, well, they got their RPG fill with Baldur's Gate, and they were obviously working on the sequel, but they wanted to go back to their like action game roots and do something different with MDK2, and it was actually their last non-RPG game ever.
That's funny.
2.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, it's not a game that a lot of people remember on the Dreamcast. I remember actually having fun with it because I didn't play it when it came out. But I remember like I got one of these subscription boxes, of course, that I did on the channel, these retro game treasure boxes.
Yeah.
And MDK2 was one of the games in the box a few years ago. And I'm like, oh, I didn't even know this game existed. I needed to give it a shot. And it was a lot of fun. I actually thought it was like a fun game that really didn't take itself too seriously, but it's just an interesting little piece of history. And in a lot of ways, it kind of inspired a game like Mass Effect because they wanted to find a way to, with that game, they wanted to kind of they wanted to find a way to like return to the roots of action games, but they knew they couldn't not make RPGs at this point. So they wanted to make a game. So that's kind of what inspired Mass Effect, where it's like, oh, let's make a sci-fi game with lots of shooting like MDK2, but it is an RPG. Still in that realm.
Interesting. So so they developed MDK2. Is there an MDK1?
There is an MDK1, but not developed by them.
That's interesting to hear, but okay, cool.
I mean, it happens. That happens all the time, though. Like how Baldur's Gate 3 is not a BioWare game either.
That's true. Yeah.
And of course, like the original era of BioWare, basically up until 2003, Garrett, all Dungeons and Dragons games besides MDK2. You had Baldur's Gate 2, you had Neverwinter Nights, and of course the original Baldur's Gate, like all the D&D games going.
Right.
Yeah, and until of course 2003. We got Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, Garrett.
Oh, dang.
Which I remember this game getting announced like 3 or 4 years before it came out because it got announced at the same time as the Star Wars MMO, Star Wars Galaxies.
Right.
And I remember at the time being so excited for Star Wars Galaxies and not even knowing I should be excited about this Star Wars Knights of the Republic game because I was too interested playing as a Jedi in an MMO. And it turns out I was wrong to be like that because Star Wars Galaxy is a bad game. But Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic was very, 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 very good. It was the reason I actually bought an original Xbox, was I bought it when that game came out and I saw the reviews for it. I was like, all right, I was on the edge of buying an Xbox already. But that was the thing that pushed me over the edge. It was the thing that got me to go out and just immediately pick up an Xbox.
I wish I got into BioWare at this time point. With Knights of the Old Republic, because I think I would have really enjoyed this game, and then I think I would have enjoyed RPGs from then on, forward. Unfortunately, I only stuck to movie-based title games. So I played Star Wars Episode 3 on the DS and on the Xbox 360. Can you believe that? Actually, it was pretty good on the 360.
Well, that was the. I will put a small correction. You would have been playing the original Xbox version.
Oh, sure.
But on back compat because it was
back compat. Yeah.
Yeah, because on 360, like over 200 Xbox games were backwards compatible, and that was one of them.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Original Xbox, but on 360, and yeah, I actually did originally want an Xbox. And it was actually for Christmas in 2005. Like I want an original Xbox. It was really Halo because I played Halo at my uncle's place and I really enjoyed it. But then I went to Best Buy at 3 a.m. with my dad to pick up a 360 in one of those cold nights in December and grabbed it. But yeah, again, I wish I grabbed Knights of the Old Republic or even known about it because I think I would have been.
I think so because like this is the type of game that like now I know a lot of people say that it hasn't aged that well, but like I feel like this would have been this is very much a Garrett game in a lot of ways. Like I feel like this is a game I think
I'm a Star Wars fan, like through and through.
Yeah, and it's turn based. Like even though the action itself plays in real time, you basically can pause the game at any time to issue commands to all your characters, and they have like auto attacks, and then you use abilities through like this.
Yeah, so very similar to Dragon Age.
Exactly.
And, yeah.
Exactly. Like so if you like Dragon Age, I think it's like a slam dunk of a game. It's so good. And of course the story is just so engrossing and well written and well acted too. That it's honestly one of my all-time favorite video games still to this day. I love it.
I think I have it downloaded on my Series X, so I just got to play it sometime.
At some point, you should.
At some point. Yeah.
It's really good. Then you too will learn the power of Pazak, Garrett, the greatest card game across the galaxy.
Oh no, another mini game that I'll get sucked into.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a great mini game, by the way. Just throwing it out there. Sean Capri, I remember famously, he was streaming Knights of the Republic and playing Pazak, and he looked so bored playing Pazaak.
He's just like, oh, what is this?
Yeah, and to be fair, that's an optional side mission. You never actually have to play Pazaak as part of the main story if you actually just go down that road. But
okay, sounds good.
I thought it was funny. But then their next game was really interesting, and one that I've always wanted them to do a sequel to. And they had one planned, but it ended up getting canceled, was Jade Empire, which is like an action RPG, but it's martial arts themed in China. Cool. And it's got a bunch of like Chinese mythology stuff in it. And like this game was awesome because it was again, really well written and acted by all of the different characters. It had a lot of really likable characters and a lot of interesting choice stuff that you can make along the way, which is of course kind of becoming BioWare's kind of hallmark with Knights of the Old Republic. But even going back to Baldur's Gate, there were choices in those games too.
Yeah.
But this game was like super interesting, and we've just never gotten anything else like it, where like we just don't have like a lot of martial arts games that aren't just, beat 'em up games. So I wish they would go back to this idea at some point because Jade Empire is so cool.
Yeah, I wish there was more fighting. Yeah, like fighting games that were in this style, or even Sleeping Dog style, which is like, GTA version where it's kind of an open world and you can go through a live like area or city, but then you go into combat. It's like legit combat. Of course, you could say Yakuza that fills that gap as well. But yeah, I really want to. I didn't know it was in China or Chinese mythology, so I would have to check it out.
Yeah, it's really cool and interesting. But it's
I think I have that too somewhere.
Yeah, I know it was also like a Games with Gold game for the longest time too. Like if you've been subscribed to Games with Gold for a long time and been claiming games, you probably own this game already on Series X. And they actually, I think this is one of the original Xbox games that actually has Series X enhancements on it.
It is, yeah.
Which is funny because KOTOR does too. Because both of these, Garrett, at the time were actually published by Microsoft because they were
correct.
Which is just interesting to think about. Because they were like, that was actually one of the reasons why I actually stuck with Xbox through the 360 generation. Because BioWare was my favorite developer at the time, and Microsoft was publishing their games. Like they were basically a Microsoft first party studio, even though they were or second party, I guess, in a lot of ways. And when Mass Effect was announced along with the Xbox 360, I was so excited for Mass Effect on 360. So I was just like, yep, I'm buying a 360 day one, even though this game isn't coming out for 3 years. And after I get this console, I'm getting it day one. I need to have a 360 on hand. Because I remember actually pre-ordering my 360 at GameStop, going in there and getting all my games and stuff. It was super cool.
So just give me an understanding here. Jade Empire in Knights of the Old Republic, it was still BioWare under EA, right?
No, this was before EA.
Oh, okay. EA snatched up BioWare after those, but before Mass Effect.
Yeah, like Mass Effect was about to come out when they acquired them.
I see.
Yeah,
Xbox should have grabbed them.
Honestly,
right then and there.
They really should have. I'm very surprised that is not how history turned out. But it was like, at the time, you have to remember, Xbox wasn't really gobbling up studios at the time. Like they had bought Rare.
That's true.
But besides Rare, what other studios did they end up buying at the time?
They were trying to pitch for Nintendo, though.
They did. They did famously try and pitch for Nintendo at the time.
Oh, man.
But yeah, and I mean, you never know. We don't know the truth behind the scenes. Like, I don't think we don't actually know if Microsoft ever put in an offer for BioWare. They might have.
Yeah, they might have. Yeah. It would have been a much different, future because of that. And it's just when every time I hear studios that have like been gobbled up by Xbox and it's not truly Xbox games or whatever, it's just like, well, BioWare was kind of like, BioWare is not, with Microsoft, but there was a built relationship, with Jade Empire, Knights of the Old Republic. So,
well, and Mass Effect 1, like I mentioned, Mass Effect 1 was also published by Microsoft. It's a Microsoft first party game.
And it's on PlayStation.
Well, it's now because after EA, but after EA purchased BioWare, they actually had to wait a specific amount of time.
I see.
Before they could release the game on PlayStation, because I think Mass Effect the original didn't actually come out on PlayStation 3 until 2012.
That's okay. That makes a lot more sense. Yeah. Okay.
Mass Effect 1 didn't come to PlayStation 3 until after Mass Effect 2 came out, like a year later.
Yeah, makes sense. And then close to Mass Effect 3.
It was close to Mass Effect 3. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
Which again is funny to think about, but because like in Mass Effect, for Mass Effect 2, if you played it on PlayStation 3, it had a motion combat at the start of the game where you had to make all your choices from Mass Effect 1 to then carry over with the story. And also to actually catch people up on the story, since they couldn't have played the first one unless they owned a 360 or a PC.
Mm-hmm. Wow. It could have been a totally different future, but it is where it is today. So,
yeah. So, of course, we had the Mass Effect trilogy. They all released from 2007 until 2012 when Mass Effect 3 came out. And yeah, you were right, Garrett. Mass Effect and Mass Effect 3 came out the same year, which is just funny to think about.
Very interesting.
Mass Effect 3, by the way, famously, of course, Wii U launch title. Because, of course.
Gosh.
It was the only game that EA released on the Wii U.
Oh, really?
because that game, I believe, sold worse than Concord.
Oh, goodness.
Meant to be believed. Yes.
Oh, goodness. That's bad.
It's almost like they shouldn't have released the third game in a trilogy that relies on choices on your console and nothing else.
On a Wii U.
On the Wii U, yeah. Because that version had like a bunch of like gamepad functionality where you'd assign your powers to the gamepad. And
see, that's cool.
That way. Yeah.
It's really cool to hear, but like what a wasted time.
Yeah.
For such small amount of people that bought it.
Because there were a bunch of other games that were supposed to come out on the Wii U from EA, and they all got canceled after Mass Effect flopped. Because if you can't sell Mass Effect on the Wii U, what else are you going to sell on the Wii U?
Right.
At that point. But then, of course, we got the return of a fantasy series with BioWare, with Dragon Age Origins, of course.
Yep.
Releasing in 2009, and that kind of kickstarted the Dragon Age quadrilogy now, Garrett, because it's about to become a quadrilogy in next month, on Halloween, no less. We're going to get
Oh, really? It's on October 31st.
It is coming out October 31st.
How is anyone going to have time? People are going to play Call of Duty.
I don't know. They'll find a way.
Yeah,
They'll find a way. I mean, they're kind of like different audiences in a way.
They're very different games, yes.
But you know, Garrett, I don't know if you knew this, but there were actually a couple canceled games that they worked on in the meantime.
Okay.
For one thing, they were working on a free-to-play online battle arena Warhammer game called Warhammer Online Wrath of Heroes.
Interesting.
Which was canceled in 2013. And it was going to be like kind of like a hack and slashy, kind of like arena shooter, but with Warhammer characters, which was interesting.
Warhammer continues to amaze me because it's this just ubiquitous franchise that tethers itself to any kind of genre and any kind of studio. They're like, do you want to do a Warhammer? Let's do it. Let's just make it happen.
Let's make it happen. Who cares?
Yeah.
We also had Command and Conquer Generals 2.
Oh,
so
my goodness.
They were developing a Command and Conquer real-time strategy game.
This is blowing my mind. It was sorry. What was the studio that made Command and Conquer again? Was it
Redwood Shores, which became Visceral, who made the Dead Space games.
Oh, I'm thinking of another studio that made real-time strategy. What was it? The Red Alert games.
Oh yes. I can't remember.
I'll look it up.
But while you're looking it up, Garrett, it's funny because again, this game was going to incorporate like choices and stuff, and it was going to be like a BioWare style story, but not an RPG, but a real-time strategy game in the Command and Conquer universe. And it was going to use the Frostbite engine, which for the first time, like it was going to be the first like Battlefield game to use Frostbite, which would have been really interesting. So we had that, and then we also had the asymmetrical multiplayer game, the action RPG Shadow Realms. Which was canceled in 2015 because that was going to be a Xbox One and PS4 game. But that got canceled too. Around the same time that Fable Heroes, which was also going to be a very similar game from Microsoft, also got canceled. Basically, they got canceled like a month or two apart from each other, which is funny.
I see. So it was Westwood Studios, right? That was the Command and Conquer. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And then, of course, famously, Garrett, in 2019, we saw them do something different with Anthem, which flopped.
That was so interesting to. Oh, okay, so I have a question for you, Ryan. Do you know when, like, the Austin studio was kind of started or born?
BioWare Austin.
I'm just curious when the Austin studio just came in fruition with BioWare.
I forgot to put that on my notes.
Because wasn't that the original, like, kind of main team for Anthem?
It was, and then it got shifted over to kind of like the main studio.
I see.
Because actually, like BioWare Austin, again, I didn't incorporate them into the studio, into the story because they're not really a BioWare studio. They're actually an EA studio that was actually founded as EA Austin in 1992. And they were actually around before BioWare even existed.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. And they were helping like with Madden for a while. They were working on a bunch of sports games. Until eventually they actually got rebranded as BioWare Austin, and they did the Old Republic MMO.
I see. Yes, the MMO RPG, the Old Republic. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. But because that's not a traditional BioWare game. It's a BioWare Austin game. They're a very different studio. But you're right. Like Anthem itself didn't start as a main BioWare game, but became one over time.
Right, over time. Yeah, and they really were invested into Anthem. I remember the showcases. I remember the gameplay reveals. How it was like, oh, this is the new thing. This is the new.
It's the new hotness.
It really was because it was really because of Destiny's kind of success, I think, really influenced that. I think it was the live service aspect that people were cleaning towards. That, oh, this is the moneymaker now. EA is like, I don't. And actually, I read into this more. It wasn't really EA's main, cause or main idea. It really was BioWare saying we want to make this game.
Of course.
Yeah, this idea. But man, this game really flopped.
It's not great.
Yeah, it wasn't great. There was minimal updates after that, and it really shut off. And I'm glad that they was very self-aware of the performance in the game itself. But yeah, this was it was hard to see. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which is too bad. But we kind of have what could be the redemption story in a lot of ways.
That's true.
Because Dragon Age: The Veilguard coming out this October. I'm excited for it. Garrett, where's your hype level for Dragon Age?
I've watched some videos of Dragon Age: The Veilguard. I think it looks cool. I think it looks good. I think, though, I want to play Dragon Age in the Mass Effect series a little bit more before I really just even get into this game particularly.
That makes sense. Especially like Dragon Age in particular, because I think there's going to be a lot of callbacks this time around.
It looks like it.
And also, too, like, this game in particular relies on a lot of characters from what we've seen from the last Dragon Age game, Inquisition.
Right.
And I feel like it might be hard to play this game without at least playing that game at least a little bit.
Mm-hmm. And I think, Dragon Age Inquisition, it was 10 years ago, by the way.
2014.
Which is crazy to think. In Game of the Year.
Yeah, at the Keighley's. It was.
at the Keighley. Yeah, and I still want to play through that game in particular. I want to go through too, because I hear it's the very, redheaded stepchild, like, very action-focused game, but it looks like the Veilguard is more like that too. It looks it's an action RPG. Yep. First and foremost, it looks like you pause and do a little bit of combinations and skills with your companions and yourself as well. But it does look like more hands-on action RPG than Inquisition was.
I don't think Dragon Age 2 is bad. I actually like that game more than a lot of other people, but I think I think a lot of people have valid complaints about that game. But at the same time, I still think it's enjoyable, and I do think it's worth playing. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to hear what you think about that.
Yeah. Well, what was the Mass Effect game that was a flop too?
Mass Effect Andromeda. Yeah, I didn't bring it up for the sake of time. But
I know. I was just thinking the two down, the past two recent games for BioWare was a downer. It was Andromeda and it was Anthem. So I really hope Dragon Age the Veilguard will go through. I'm confident. It looks good. I think it can be a great game. I think it can be an 80. I don't know if it can be a 90 per se, but it looks good. It looks high quality. It looks very well produced. It looks like the combat's fun. I think there's a lot to do though in this game, which maybe I think they've done a little too much, but compared to their other games, I played a little bit of Dragon Age Inquisition. There's a lot into that too, a lot of depth. So maybe just people like that more. But
yeah,
anyways,
I like the action stuff. So yeah. Either way, that's kind of cap off the history of BioWare. But before we move on and before we say goodnight, of course, we got a question from Ryu, who asks, "What is your favorite BioWare game and why? Do you think the Knights of the Republic remake will actually happen, or is it forever in limbo?" So let's tackle the first question first, Garrett.
Sure.
I know you haven't played a lot of these games.
No,
so
I haven't.
Your choice is going to be very limited. But what's your favorite BioWare game, nonetheless?
I'm gonna have to go with Dragon Age Origins right now, just because that's the only game I've played from start to finish. How about that?
Yeah, because you've dabbled in some of these other games. You just haven't finished any of these other games.
Right. Exactly. Loved it. I love Dragon Age Orange. Oh, yeah, it's so good. The writing's fantastic and the choices. There's so many different paths to go through in that game. Very solid RPG for sure.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. Yeah, I mean it's a tough choice because I like a lot of these games. I probably would go. I mean, personally speaking, again, if I was doing like the critical choice, I mean, I would say Mass Effect 2 probably hands down is probably the best one. But the one closest to Ryan's favorite hearts is actually probably Knights of the Old Republic.
That's what I thought. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely a toss up between Mass Effect 1, Jade Empire, and Dragon Age Inquisition. I really loved. I really loved a lot of BioWare's games. So it's just really, really tough. It's really tough. But that's good. Oh, Captain Awesome chimes in, with an interesting idea. Can you guys do a timeline of Team Asano? I don't even know if you write it like Jaja. I don't know what that
like
means.
That.
Yeah, like that.
Haha. Yeah.
Haha. Okay. We did. I don't know if we did like a full timeline of Team Asano, Garrett. But we've talked about Team Asano a lot on this podcast.
Yeah. That's the JRPG studio in Square Enix, right?
Yeah, that's the one that did like the Bravely Default games. Because we did like an old episode, I think, on them.
I think. Well, we did not. It was a division of Square Enix. I forgot what business unit it was.
Yes,
but
that's what it was.
Team Asano is part of it.
Yes, because
it's with the Dragon Quest people. It's with the whole thing over there.
Yeah. I'll have to look that up and post that in the Discord, Captain Awesome, because I remember we did an episode where we did like a deep dive like that with them.
Because there's a lot of muddying the waters with Team Asano. There's just because there's Bravely Default and they kind of helped with that, and I don't know with Tokyo RPG Factory Tokyo RPG Factory. That's the one. Yeah. It's a little bit messy, but maybe we could do it sometime.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, for sure. But then Rio's second question, of course, do you think the Knights of the Old Republic remake will actually happen? I will say that game will never happen until they prove me otherwise. I just don't think it's ever coming out at this point. Or if it is, it's going to be a completely different game than what it actually was supposed to be. Yeah.
So the current hands of Star Wars, the Knights of the Old Republic remake is Saber Interactive.
Yep.
They say from their public statements that they are working on it.
Yep.
And even though a lot of people out there is like, oh no, it's canceled, oh it's gone. It's like the CEO reassured us, no, we have it. We're working on it. And that's pretty much the end of that, though. So, and for folks who don't know, who was the original developer for this? I forget. It's based in Dallas, based in my hometown.
Yeah, it was
actually.
Aspire.
Aspire, that's it. Yeah, and they gave it to Aspire because they've done a lot of ports for old Star Wars games. And they're like, oh man, maybe they could just do this one hit with Knights of the Old Republic remake. And of course, Sony backed it up, which was an odd choice, to be honest with you. I don't like maybe
they
Sony
talked about it in interviews. They went to Microsoft and Microsoft turned them down.
Yeah, but I'm just curious why Sony went for it. And I guess it's because to have that Star Wars edge or something like that. But I was surprised to hear, seeing a lot of the weird decisions Sony's been doing recently with developers. It's a weird decision to fund Aspyr to do this because it is not a studio that makes brand new games or anything like that. They are a port studio of older games. And I was not surprised to see it flunk.
Yeah.
Zero surprise to me.
Yeah, we've had questions on the show basically ever since the show started about Knights of the Old Republic remake, because it was around the time I think when we started the show.
Yeah.
They actually announced that they were doing this. And like, I think from day one, you and I have both been skeptical about this project with Aspyr.
Yeah. Even though, there was the trailer, everyone freaking out or whatever, but then, it was a few articles later and suddenly realized Aspyr is developing this. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. So it was not surprised that they was flunk out of that studio. I'm glad they made that quick decision to get them out of that. And so it's in the hands of Saber Interactive, which they have done many different good games. It's not really terrible or bad. I'm sure there's hits and misses coming from them. But I'm on the same boat where I just need to see something.
Yeah.
To lift my spirits up for that game. But I'm just telling you this, if it's in the hands of Saber Interactive and it's not their priority right now, don't expect this game to be revealed anytime soon. I
think this game is like, if it does come out, it probably comes out on PlayStation 6.
It's a next-gen game. Yeah, easily. Because I'm sure Saber wants to do it right. It's not like they want to, mess it up or anything like. Well, I'm curious. What are they working on, anyways?
Saber works on a bunch of stuff. They
do.
They're also like a publishing arm too. So
yeah,
because they're not part of THQ anymore, or not THQ. THQ.
It was what is that company called? The huge one.
The Middle Earth and Friends.
Middle Earth and Friends. Yeah, that's the new studio. Yeah.
Because I think they're part of that. I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
But,
anyways,
it's a game. It's going to be a game that comes out at some point. We'll see. But I don't have faith in it, Ryu. I'm sorry. I really don't. And again, I just want them to win me over at this point. You know what? I want them to prove me wrong. Prove me wrong. Saber Interactive, please.
Yeah, Saber Interactive is a publishing arm. They have a bunch of studios.
Yeah. That's the thing. We don't even know if it's Saber proper that's developing it or if it's, a studio under them.
Yeah, I think it could be Saber developer, to be honest with you. Man, okay, so they recently got at Space Marine 2. Yeah. And that was Saber Interactive. That was the that was the developer.
And that's a good game.
Jurassic Park Survival, that's coming out TBA. Saber Interactive, that's the developer.
Yeah, that's a game I'm actually excited about.
John Carpenter's Toxic Commando.
Yep. Is that the beat 'em up one or is that the other? Is it?
I don't remember, but yeah, it released 2024. Exploding Kittens VR. That's developer Saber.
See, they make all kinds of weird stuff.
And
McBale points out a good point. Maybe they'll have more time to work on it after releasing Space Marine 2. Probably.
I'm just seeing these games, man. I don't know.
That's what I mean. Like, even if this game comes out, Garrett, they don't really always exude quality with their games. Like, they have some good games, like Space Marine 2, but they also have a lot of bad games too. So,
they don't have an RPG under their belt, it seems like.
Yeah. Well, we already knew this game was more going in the action RPG direction anyways, they talked about. So I think that's where they're going with this, with the Old Republic remake anyways. I don't think it was going to be a turn-based role-playing game.
Right. I understand that, but I just don't see RPG games in general.
True. Yeah, because I mean, Evil Dead the game, Garrett, not a role playing game. You know.
Yeah, I'm just looking at their just all their the list in their official website is just like all just weird random games,
like
but
Wild
licensed
Card
games. Wildcard football, gosh.
Yeah.
World War Z is a big one. And then they had Call of Cthulhu. They had Ghostbusters, the video game remastered. They actually, oh my gosh, I forgot about this. They did port the Vampire and Witcher 3 Wild Hunt complete edition to Nintendo Switch.
There you go. They're the miracle makers on the Switch, Garrett.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, okay. They've done a help here and there, but not an RPG at all. World War Z is probably the biggest one I'm seeing other than Space Marine 2.
Yeah, it's not a death sentence or anything like that. I think they can make a good role-playing game if they've ever played one before.
Wait. So you got Gloomhaven. But Asmodee Digital is the developer for that.
Right, they just published it.
Right. Makes more
sense. Because again, you have to remember, there's a lot of games published under the Saber Interactive name.
Yeah.
Developed by them.
They do VR games.
Yeah.
Wait, hold on. I'm checking.
Now you're just down this rabbit hole of Saber Interactive. You're just like, I need to know.
Because I'm seeing the columns on Wikipedia, and the publisher for Gloomhaven is Asmodee Digital. The developer is Saber Interactive. Okay. Or maybe Wikipedia is wrong, which could very well be.
It also, they could be wrong. Just like Saber Interactive, Garrett, developed the Halo Combat Evolved Anniversary Edition.
Yes, they did, along with 343. Yeah.
Yes.
Or wherever the studio was at the time.
Exactly.
Anyways, I'm just letting you know, don't get your hopes up with Knights of the Old Republic remake with Saber Interactive. That's it. Mm-hmm.
Please don't get too excited about it.
Unless they transfer it over somewhere else.
Yeah. All right. Last comment of the week before we go comes to us from Final Fantasy VIII is Life. Final Fantasy VIII is Love.
Oh, no.
Who says, just wanted to wish the RPG Cave a happy Final Fantasy VIII anniversary day today. Which, of course, Final Fantasy VIII is exactly 30 years old as of today, Garrett. Also,
it's not 30 years old.
I'm pretty sure it is.
No, you said 9/9/99.
No, that was the Dreamcast release date.
Oh, okay. Sorry, never mind. Okay.
Because in North America, Final Fantasy VIII didn't come out until 1999. But in fact, hold on. Yeah, what is he talking about? I'm looking this up, and I'm I guess North America, it did come out in 1999. So you're right. It is it's 30 years old. September 9th, 1999 is when Final Fantasy VIII came out.
Yeah.
So 30 years.
Yeah, 30 years. Or no, that's not 30 years. Jeez, now you're messing me up. 9/9/99 is not. It's not 30 years old. It's 25. Or no wait. Yeah, it's 25.
You know what, Garrett? It's math. Okay.
It's 25 years old.
Whatever. YOLO, as the kids say.
Moral of the story is, Ryan, don't play Final Fantasy.
Final Fantasy VIII hurts my brain. That's what caused this to happen. Also, Final Fantasy VIII is Life. Final Fantasy VIII is Love. Also wanted to wish me a happy Season 1 launch of World of Warcraft: The War Within tomorrow.
Oh, it's coming out. You know what also came out tomorrow? It's coming out tomorrow.
What's that?
Episode Igus.
It's actually technically out right now.
Oh, it's out right now.
At midnight.
It's pre-downloaded right now. Yeah. It's ready to go.
Whereas The War Within is already out, but this is like Season 1, so the raids and all the end game stuff is finally out, which I'm very excited to go through this week. I've been prepping my character. I'm sure. Ready to go. My Shadow Priest is ready to enter the raid. I'm very excited about this. Looking forward to it this week. Maybe I should stream that on.
You should at some point in September.
I should. But that's going to do it for this episode of the RPG Cave. But before we go, we got to thank all of our patrons who are at patreon.com/carpoolgaming, starting with our ultimate producers, Jonathan Brown, the man behind the music on the Xbox Drive and the PlayStation Drive. You can find all of his music over on his link tree, linktr.ee/pme/.jb. And Cwagmire, who humbly reminds you that the best babes are Xenobabes. And TechMike, who says, whether you're Kesvi or Arganian, you're a Xenobabe at heart. I don't know any of this stuff, Garrett. You should clarify because you're a Xenobabe, I guess. You know, if you played these games, you know how to pronounce names. I don't know, man.
I don't know.
Cool.
I have no idea. Sorry.
All right. Well, Thanks. A huge thank you again to all of our ultimate producers. Make sure to go and support them. Of course, the links to all their stuff can always be found in the description of our podcast. Our platinum producers, CowboyDangerD, Peje, Solo, Smokin Joe, The Captain, and Tim Paullin. And our gold members, Adam K, Anna, Awesome Dave 1337, BobLoblaw, Brad Moore, Brian Reese, Cecily Carrozza, Dan and Luma, Dannohh, Drellesh, Emily O'Kelly, Hoppel, Jan32, Kia Savoy, Liger Woods 330, OldMrFrump, Patrice Mallette, Shane Erickson, TechMike, The Jiggy Collector, and Tim Aulph. Huge thank you once again to all of our patrons over at patreon.com/carpoolgaming. If you want to head on over there, hop in the cars with us, choose the tier that's right for you. And now Garrett, plugs go.
You can follow me at Twitter at Bland Explosion. You can also find me on the Discord. I read every message on RPG Cave. I am reading the Steam page here on Gloomhaven, Ryan. I am going on. I'm going on a rabbit hole. So it says two things here for developer: Flaming Fowl Studios and Saber Interactive. Okay. Those were the two on Steam, and then the publisher is Twin Sails Interactive. My goodness, I don't understand this mess. And then recent reviews is mixed. All reviews is very positive. I did not know Gloomhaven was like a board, RPG before, but I guess it is. And I guess it's very positive. But when I, read the comments or the reviews of this, it sounds like the multiplayer is a buggy mess, but everything else seems pretty good. So there you go. That's my assessment of this mess of a dual developed game of Saber Interactive and Flaming Fowl Studios.
You finally got to the end of the rainbow, Garrett. You finally figured it out.
What is Flaming Fowl Studios? Okay. I think Flaming Fowl Studios is the pinnacle of this because it looks like they just do this. So anyway, Saber Interactive.
They're kind of like the LJN of the modern era, Garrett, in a lot of ways. Because LJN, of course, publishing a lot of random games. Just throwing them out there. Friday the 13th on
with Elden Ring and Friends? Not Elden Ring, sorry.
Middle Earth and Friends.
Middle Earth. That's what I meant. You know what I meant. I meant Lord of the Rings and Friends.
If only it was Elden Ring and Friends. Like, oh man.
Anyways. I feel so bad for them, to be honest with you. Falling apart like this and being in this mess. I'm just glad Gearbox is with 2K. Yeah. And they got Borderlands 4.
I mean, at least they have Borderlands 4 after the Borderlands movie, which we never got to talk about, Garrett.
Oh boy, I didn't watch it.
Yeah, neither did I.
I just did not want to waste my money or my time.
Yeah.
Man, that franchise, it could have been, I don't know. I guess 2 was the pinnacle and that's fine.
That's just how it's always going to be
at
this point.
I'm okay with this. I'm curious about 4 though. We'll see how it goes.
I hope it's good. Mm-hmm. Just what I also hope is good is, of course, you following me on Twitter at Ryan Turford. You also find us on Twitter at Carpool Gaming. Right here, youtube.com/Carpool Gaming. Of course, twitch.tv/Carpool Gaming live as well all month for September. Make sure to check us out over on the Twitch page. By the way, we are streaming all the time. Lots of stuff, including Garrett on the calendar this weekend after another RPG Cave episode on Saturday. I am doing a Mega Man marathon, all 6 Mega Man games in a row.
Nice.
All the NES Mega Man games, we're playing them all. No speed run. We're just going to play them.
Darn.
We're going to play them casually. We're going to have fun with them. I'm going to beat all 6 games in a row. It's going to be awesome.
Is it going to take like a couple hours or something like that?
Yeah, it's going to take like at least 6 hours to finish.
Oh, 6 hours. Okay.
At least 6 hours to finish all of them. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. But anyways, for Garrett Bland, I'm Ryan Turford. This has been the 153rd level of the RPG Cave, and we're out.
Bye-bye.